But talking about miracles, so I was talking to Jason and Mr. Shapiro, and maybe others. I'm not trying to leave anybody else out, but there was a speaker that came here last night, in honor of the yard site of really one of the foundational members of the Orthodox community in Memphis. And the rabbi brought a very interesting point. He says that he cannot think of a generation, probably ever, perhaps since the Jewish nation left Egypt and went through that experience of the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea and the manna and right and all those amazing miracles and the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But to have a generation where in such a short period of time, especially, that we've experienced so many miracles. Reflecting back on, since October 7th, and even October 7th itself, obviously it was a horrific, and all the things that took place, but how much worse it could have been and how much worse that Hamas had planned, right? They had big plans. They had huge plans. So obviously, even one soul, right, one person being killed is horrific and sad enough of a day. And obviously, to have that many, and we're still living parts of that. But to think about the number of miracles and the books that are starting to come out about it, and the people that are talking about it, it's really unbelievable. So you said we have to make sure to stop and think about that part of it, because it is, especially in the moments where we get lost in the tragedy of it, and we should be sad about it, right? We experienced this as a people, as a country, as a people. We've experienced this. We need to make sure that we're taking it to heart, and we're trying to think of the ways that we can do things and what it is that we can do or should do, how to do. We need to do that. We need to feel that. We also need to make sure that we have stop and have an appreciation for the number of unbelievable things that have happened and happen on a regular basis since October 7th. And obviously that just is I always like to say that's like the enlarged to show texture. You ever see that in the cereal boxes, right? It says enlarged to show texture, right? So when we have these big miracles that we hear about or that we see, those are really just an enlarged texture of all the things that Hashem does for us on a regular basis, right? We have these bigger things that happen that were more open miracles, and those are really just a representation of how much Hashem does for us, and we need to make sure we appreciate that, and then if we appreciate it appropriately and properly, we won't necessarily find ourselves in situations where we have to force us to appreciate that. So that's just a little bit of that. Now, talk about appreciation. It takes us right into the Torah portion. Well done, guys. So how does it connect to the Torah portion? This Torah portion is called Korach. Okay? Korach was a bad dude, but he actually was a brilliant dude. And he was actually very righteous at different points. And he's most famous for really leading a rebellion. He led a rebellion against Moshe and Aaron, which ultimately means against Hashem. He led that rebellion. Where did it come from? So Korach was a cousin of Moshe and Aaron, and his role was not a Kohen position. He was a Levi position. And he came forward and said, what is this business about you guys? Look at the nepotism over here. Look at you guys going ahead. And, this is Moshe and Aaron, these two brothers, and now Aaron's kids are the Kohen the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol. Like, this is, like, who decided that you're the part of the family that gets to have all these, amazing positions? What about me? What am I, chopped liver? Like, what's going on over here? Obviously, he wasn't chopped liver. He actually had a phenomenal job, one of the most important jobs of all the Levium, of all the Levites. And he got himself in big trouble, so much so he got other Jews in trouble. He had an entire clan that joined him. They all died. They died by being swallowed up in the ground. The ground opened up. The mouth of the ground opened up and swallowed them and all their belongings, everything. Korach happened to have, I believe, it was 2 kids that survived, but they actually they really didn't survive. They really went down to the abyss, and then they were spared because they shouted forth the words of teshuvah, that they recognized that Hashem's in charge, and this is not their following their father's lead was inappropriate. But where did it come from? Came from a lack of appreciating who he was, what he was, how great he really was, and how his recognition of understanding his role in Judaism, in the Jewish people, right? And you don't need to be the Kohen Gadol. You don't need to be the king, right? You don't need to be the president of the Jewish people, the prince of the Jewish people, right? To bring about impact and to impact the world and impact the Jewish people and beyond. There's a big mistake that he made. He looked into his future. He knew his future. He knew in the future he was going to have Samuel, Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet, come from him. And we understand about Samuel that Samuel really was in certain ways as great as Moshe and Aaron. So Korach said to himself, I'm going to have Samuel come from me. I'm going to have Shmuel Hanavi come from me. And I'm not the Kohen Gadol. Unbelievable. So he made this horrific judgment, and he got himself and everybody else hurt big time. And he really shook the Jewish people. And there was the potential for shaking the Jewish people's faith, also faith and commitment to Moshe, which obviously would have ruined the Jewish people. And I think it speaks big time to the world of roles, right? ROLE, right? Our roles in life. Miriam was talking to somebody this week, and she said, like, she wants to be known as, like, she hopes to get to a place in her life where, or her hope for her life, I wasn't there as Miriam was telling me part of this. If this person ever listens to the phone call, don't worry, I will not say who you are. Don't worry about it. But she wants to be known as, Mrs. So-and-so, I'll just use my wife as an example, Mrs. Miriam Karp, and not be known as Mrs. Noach Karp, right? Like, that's like what she feels would be like the thing. So Miriam and I were talking about roles, and Miriam was like, I said to Miriam, I said, I actually think that my name is Mr. Miriam Karp, is what I think my name is, right?
Because you know who the true boss in the family is, right?
It's no doubt. There's no doubt in the Karp house who runs things, who the boss is, who do I turn to for everything. And it's no doubt, right? So Miriam's like, so of course Miriam's like, well, I have no problem being called. Oh, we lost Jeffrey. Miriam's like, I have no problem being called Mrs. Noach Karp. It doesn't bother me in the slightest to be called Mrs. Noach Karp. And I said, that's wonderful, thank you. But she said, I don't even think of myself in that way because it's so clear. And I feel like I have, this is Miriam talking, that I have such a clarity. I try and have worked hard between the two of us and the conversations and talking to my rabbis and talking to my mentors and so on and so forth. I have a clarity about who I am, what my role is, where I'm supposed to be, and I know how unbelievably important it is. And if I was to try to do you and you were to try to do me, we would be in big trouble. It would not work, right? So it's not about spotlights. I always tell people when it comes to the world of marriage and, dating and these kinds of things, you're looking for somebody who is going to be your teammate, who's going to help you shine and work on becoming your best self. Pick your pair, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan. I don't know. Kobe, Shaq. You can go through it, go through, everyone's got their people, get this us, John Stockton and Carmelo. Like, you can get into some good discussions about it. It's a little harder. It's a little harder nowadays with some of the new teams. I don't know what to do with these new guys, but it's a different world. The big three, right? Yeah. But in a serious fashion, right? This understanding of position, of role, who we are, how we can shine from the place that we are, right? That is tremendous. That is a very important place to be. And that's something that we need to work on. We need to work on figuring it out for ourselves. We need to dive into Hashem about trying to work on that clarity. If we're feeling jealousy of someone's position or someone's place in life, someone else's lot, right? If we're feeling jealousy about that, well, that might mean that we need to stop and figure it out. Be appreciative of what we have. Do we really know who we are? Are we really working on being on becoming our best self? Right? We've got talents, we've got skills. Are we using them properly? And if we're not, well, when's the last time we double checked? We checked ourselves, did an audit of ourselves to make sure that the role that we're in is where we're really supposed to be. Now you're right. There's no bells and whistles that are going off and saying ding 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 ding. Yeah, Jason, you got this right. Right? It doesn't work that way. But it's very hard for ourselves to look at ourselves and know that we're where we're supposed to be. We should try to make an assessment, but we got to have a good friend. We got to have a mentor that we speak to. We got to have a rabbi perhaps in our lives that we turn to for their wisdom, but not just for their wisdom, really for their non-bias. Right? We can't look at ourselves clearly. We're always making excuses for ourselves all the time. Right? We make excuses all the time for ourselves. It's called in Hebrew or Gemara English called being mora heter, which really means making an excuse. But it's more than that. We actually turn something wrong. We do it so much and we turn it into really being appropriate. We say that this flaw that we have, this thing that we know we're doing wrong, it's actually the right thing to be doing because we've convinced ourselves of that. Or we really need that thing to happen because I can't imagine surviving without it, even though it's not really okay. I'm sure we can think of examples for ourselves. I got a bunch about myself, right, that I've worked on over the years, and I can give you a list still of the ones I need to work on. That we make it to ourselves as if it's okay, but it's really not okay. And if we were to ask ourselves and step back and look at ourselves and be like, Carp, is this really okay? Not really, man. You're making excuses for yourself because you don't want to step into that position. It's hard. It's a hard role. It takes work, right? All these kinds of things. And this is the mistake that Korach was making. He was challenging authority, right? Mostly because he didn't really know his role. Didn't know his position. I mean, come on. Who would want to have to be Moses? Right? All the junk Moses went through. Who on earth would want to be Moses? Right? I wouldn't want to deal with that. I mean, right now, to be a leader of a country in the world today, would you want to be a leader of a country today?
Not a chance.
Way. Not a chance. It's all the beef that we give all these guys, right? Everyone can have their own opinions about what this and that. I'm not getting into that, right? But I think it's actually a nice factor to think about as we badmouth, which we shouldn't be doing anyways. But as we, from our comfort of our couches or our beer or whatever it is, we go to have a get together with some buddies and we shoot the breeze and talk about beating up on all of the different political leaders that are out there, right? Something to think about is would you want to do it, right? Which is wonderful in a certain sense because the Torah tells us that the people that are in these positions, like they're in those positions because God allowed them to be in those positions, right? The Mishnah Pigova says we should daven, right? We should daven for the shalom, for the sake, daven for the sake of the peace of the malchus of the king, of the kingdom that we're in. We got to pray for that. That's why we have it in our services. We say a special blessing, right? Amisha Berach for the country that we live in, for Israel, and so on and so forth. For the leaders of the countries that should deal with us well in this state, right? In this country, they should deal with our brothers and sisters in Israel properly, and so on and so forth. That's a prayer. It's our responsibility as members of the country that we live in to pray, right? They talk about the different rabbis that lived in tough countries, but they recognize that the leader of the country, even though they may have been an anti-Semite and hated the Jews or didn't deal with the Jews so nicely, but they still prayed on the behalf of the czar, of whoever it might have been, because at least they knew who their enemy was, right? And they had to daven to Hashem that it should be held or done properly. So these are all things. This is a concept of a role. Know your role, know your job, right? Or as Belichick would say, do your job, right, Jeffrey?
Good book,
right? Do your job. But the thing is, we have to make sure that we're actually doing the right job. And that's a question we got to ask ourselves. And that requires a lot of humility, right? It requires emotional honesty, intellectual honesty, right? This is what it requires. And it's not an easy thing to do. But I think a portion like this, a Torah portion like this, is a time for us to go ahead. Anytime there's strife in the world, but when we have strife going on in the world, along with a Torah portion like this, we got to make sure that we do this for ourselves. A selfish activity to self-audit and perhaps show the audit to somebody else, discuss it with somebody else, even though it might be uncomfortable, because we got to make sure that we're in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time, and have that opportunity to give ourselves a good look. And if we do that, obviously we can walk with the confidence. Like I did my part, Hashem. I did the audit. I recognize my role, and now whatever it's going to be, I'm going to live it, and I'm going to breathe it, and I'm going to put everything I can into it to make sure that I'm really accomplishing what I should be accomplishing. So that's just an idea from the portion. It's worthwhile. We didn't get into any of the nitty gritty of the portion. Definitely worthwhile to check that out. And God willing, if we do this and we add this to our lives, life will be awesome. Life will be amazing. So my bracha to everybody, my blessing to everybody, is that we should have that honesty, that intellectual honesty, emotional honesty. We should have that clarity to be honest with ourselves. If we don't feel like we have somebody in our lives that we could talk things out with, God willing, we should merit to find them real fast. And, put some pressure on some friends. Tell me, man, I want you to really be honest with me. Tell me, right? And if we do that, it's not easy. But God willing, we should have the energy to do that. And if we do that, life will be awesome. Life will be awesome. Amazing. Any thoughts, rebuttals? Because I got to run to services. I'm actually speaking again by services. So I know what I'm saying yet, but I'm supposed to speak by services.